I'd like to welcome everyone to this presentation hosted by the Canadian Theosophical Association. I'm Jennifer Hay, as as you probably know. Hi, everybody. The aim of these webinars is to provide information that encourages open-minded exploration and the opportunity to engage with presenters on the topics of theosophy, science, art, and world religions. Most of all, we promote self-transformation and realizing the unity of life. I'm assuming everyone here is familiar with the Zoom meeting format and functionality and don't need to explain anything about how to ask a question, raising your hand. Is anyone wanting a refresher on those details, or can I proceed?
Go ahead.
Okay. All right, so today's class, the post-mortem process, is presented by Mairi Budreau, who's been studying the writings of the TS founders and practicing theosophy since 2019. She attends weekly study groups on the secret doctrine and non-duality. She's an active board member of the Canadian Theosophical Association, coordinates speakers for our English language national webinar presentations, and designs the monthly CTA newsletter. Mairi serves as secretary and presenter of the Kamloops Theosophical Study Group, which meets twice monthly, and she posts regularly on the Facebook page Theosopher's Stone. So, Mairi, with that having been said, we're looking forward to hearing your presentation.
Thank you, Jennifer. Welcome, everyone, on this Sunday morning or afternoon. Welcome, Deborah. Great to see you here. She's from one of my one of the study groups that I attend. So just so we know, as we get into this, the majority of the material that's going to be presented today is from the Theosophical Manual number 3, called Death and After, written by Annie Besant. And the flow of the presentation today will be reading, and if you want to ask a question, raise your hand or speak. Jennifer, when I'm sharing the screen, I won't be able to see anyone's raised hand in their window. So I'll need you to monitor that for me and just cut in whenever someone wants to ask a question or has a comment. And I just want to note too that if you end up reading her book after this, you might find some of the terminology is changed. And what I changed was she used the word astral double, and I used etheric double and etheric body for that. And she also uses Kamaloka, and I use the astral plane or the astral body, depending on the context. So, all right, so I'm going to share my screen and clear this out of here. Okay, post-mortem process. So I want to start with just a refresher of the 7 planes, or the 7 principles, sorry, of humanity. The one we're most familiar with on a daily basis at the bottom, the physical body, the dense body. And then also part of the physical realm is the etheric double and the aura. And then we go into the astral body, which is the emotional plane, and the lower and higher manas, which is the mental body, causal body. There's so many names that we use in theosophy. I try to keep it to the same ones all the time when I give presentations. Those, the manas planes are also known as Devachan. And then above that, we have Buddhi, which is the intuitional, spiritual soul. And above that, Atma, which is the universal spirit. Now, in saying higher, it's a higher energy frequency, and these planes are not separated like this. They actually intermingle in the reality of things. The lower ones in the earth energy realm, and they're only displayed like this so that we can understand them. So I just want to give that little refresher on those because these are referred to quite a bit in this presentation. The sunlight ranges over the universe, and at incarnation, we step out of it into the twilight of the body and see but dimly during the period of our incarceration. At death, we step out of the prison again into the sunlight and are nearer to the reality. Short are the twilight periods, and long the periods of the sunlight. But in our blinded state, we call the twilight life, and to us it is the real existence, while we call the sunlight death and shiver at the thought of passing into it. The fate of the body. The human body is constantly undergoing a process of decay. First built into the astral form in the womb of the mother, it is built up continually by the insetting of fresh materials. With every moment, tiny molecules are passing away from it. With every moment, tiny molecules are streaming into it. The outgoing stream is scattered over the environment and helps to rebuild bodies of all kinds in the mineral, vegetable, animal, and human kingdoms, and physical basis of these being one and the same. Could everyone please mute while unless you're speaking? Ron?
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't catch that.
Could you mute, please? Mute your window.
I'm sorry.
Can you mute your window?
Oh, yes. Okay.
Sorry, I didn't say that loud enough. Thank you.
Did I do that?
There you go. Thanks. Okay, so back to these, back to the in and out passing of molecules. At death, they become a disorganized and tumultuous mob, rushing hither and thither, jostling each other, tumbling over each other, with no common object, no generally recognized authority. The body is never more alive than when it is dead, but it is alive in its units and dead in its totality. So what she's saying here is that when the governing principle of the etheric body has left, right, the consciousness and the etheric body have left the physical body, there's nothing any longer organizing the physical body. And so it just starts to fall apart, and we don't see it happen rapidly, but it starts immediately. And the atoms are all activated. It's like, oh, nobody's organizing me, nobody's running me. I have to do this myself. And that's just my interpretation of it. And then it starts to disintegrate. The etheric double is the vehicle of prana, or vitality, and we'll explain prana a bit further on. It exercises the controlling and coordinating force spoken of, and death takes triumphant possession of the body when the etheric double is finally withdrawn and the delicate cord which unites it with the body is snapped, and the delicate cord being the silver cord. This process of withdrawal has been watched by clairvoyants and definitely described. Andrew Jackson Davis describes how he himself watched this escape of the ethereal body, and he states that the magnetic cord did not break for some 36 hours after apparent death. Others have described in similar terms how they saw a faint violet mist rise from the dying body, gradually condensing into a figure which was the counterpart of the expiring person, and attached to that person by a glistening thread. The snapping of the thread means the breaking of the last magnetic link between the physical body and the remaining principles of the human constitution. The body has dropped away from man. He is excarnated, disembodied, and the six principles remain. And those six principles are the ones we saw in the image in the diagram at the start. No longer was the lower one, the body, a part of this organization. Did anyone have any comments or experiences with seeing anything like this? Okay. Oh yeah, so here I put this in as a reminder. So so yeah, so we've dropped the lower. Now we're left with these six. He grows to recognize the fact of supreme importance that life has nothing to do with the body and with this material plane, that life is his conscious existence, unbroken, unbreakable, and that the belief and that the brief interludes in that life during which he sojourns on earth are but a minute fraction of his conscious existence, and a fraction, moreover, during which he is less alive because of the heavy coverings which weigh him down. So imagine, well, we don't have to imagine, we're going to do it at some point. We're going to realize that we are not this body and living in this illusionary world. We're going to be in and experience that eternal aspect of ourselves. The fate of the etheric double. When the etheric double finally quits the body, it does not travel any distance from it. Normally, it remains floating over the body, the state of consciousness being dreamy and peaceful, unless tumultuous distress and violent emotions surround the corpse. And here it may be well to say that during the slow process of dying, while the etheric double is withdrawing from the body, and also after it has withdrawn, extreme quiet and self-control should be observed in the chamber of death. For during this time, the whole life passes swiftly in review before the ego. This instant is enough to show him the whole chain of causes which have been at work during his life. He sees and now understands himself as he is, unadorned by flattery or self-deception. He reads his life, remaining as a spectator looking down into the arena he is quitting. So we also get this view of our life as it actually was, and the greater meanings and purposes for things we suffered or things we enjoyed or people we encountered. And we're not looking at our life through our personality anymore. We get to see it in this review as the higher self sees it, untainted by the personality that we have. A master has written, at the last moment, the whole life is reflected in our memory and emerges from all the forgotten nooks and corners, picture after picture, one event after another. The man may often appear dead, yet from the last pulsation, from in between the last throbbing of his heart and the moment when the last spark of animal heat leaves the body, the brain thinks. And the ego lives over in those few brief seconds his whole life. Speak in whispers, he who assists at a deathbed, and find yourselves in the solemn presence of death. Especially have ye to keep quiet just after death has laid her clammy hand upon the body. Speak in whispers. I say, lest ye disturb the quiet ripple of thought and hinder the busy work of the past, casting its reflection upon the veil of the future. Now, that last sentence, casting the reflection upon the veil of the future, the conditions in which the passing takes place has a very important effect on its journey, if it goes through the astral plane into the Devachanic, whichever path it's going through. Some people are spiritualized enough that they can bypass the astral, but no matter the cause of the death, the manner in which we go will have an impact on our journey to Devachan. This is the time during which the thought images of the ended earth life, clustering around their maker, group and interweave themselves into the completed image of that life and are impressed in their totality on the astral light. The dominant tendencies, the strongest thought habits, assert their preeminence and stamp themselves as the characteristics which will appear as innate qualities in the succeeding incarnation. So she's saying there that these are we may have a focus in our life of doing something or being something or achieving something. And if it lasted for decades or even long periods of time, these will impress themselves also in the astral. And because the astral is energy and we can make whatever we see, feel, or think, that will be our experience there. So if we were the type to experience a lot of anger at society, for example, we will be experiencing it there too for a period. It wears off, but that's kind of like the starting point. And again, if someone does a lot of spiritual work and service work, then their experience will be that when they first arrive. Okay. The dominant tendencies, the strongest thought habits assert their, yes, okay, sorry, I read that. The balancing up of the life issues, this reading of the karmic records, is too solemn and momentous a thing to be disturbed by the ill-timed wailings of personal relatives and friends. In the ordinary person, the dreamy, peaceful semi-consciousness spoken of as above, as the etheric double floats above the body, now is completely separated from it. Sometimes this double is seen by persons in the house, and she's saying house because this book was written in 1901, and back then people often died at home, or in the neighborhood, when the thought of dying has been strongly turned to someone left behind, when some anxiety has been in the mind at the last, something left undone which needed doing, or when some local disturbance has shaken the quality of the passing entity. Under these conditions, or others of a similar nature, the double may be seen or heard. When seen, it shows the dreamy, hazy consciousness alluded to. It is silent, vague in aspect, and unresponsive. The etheric corpse is left behind with the physical corpse, and they disintegrate together. It goes on until the physical body has completely disintegrated and the particles have gone to form other combinations. So she's saying here that as long as that physical body has not been cremated, for example, the etheric body stays with it. And it can take, I don't know, 100, 200 years for a body, like even the hair and the nails and the teeth, like those things last a long, long time. And as long as there's something left, the etheric body stays with it. And if you've heard of graveyard ghosts, it's usually the etheric body that people are seeing because all the physical bodies are planted there. Occasionally cremated ones are there, but most often in recent history, it's been the whole body. One of the great advantages of cremation, apart from all the sanitary conditions, lies in the swift restoration to Mother Nature of the material elements composing the physical and astral corpses, brought about by the burning. Instead of slow and gradual decomposition, swift disassociation takes place, and no physical or astral remnants are left, working possible mischief on the physical and astral planes. And we'll dig into that more in a little bit. But I found it interesting in this study that by burning the corpses, we free up atoms for new life, for new rocks, for new plants, animals, and people. So when you think of our own body, I could have atoms from a tree, from the ocean, from, some volcano from 2 million years ago. This is for all of us. We all have these atoms in us. Are there any comments or questions at this point? We're all good? Okay. I can't see everyone, but okay. The fate of prana and the astral body. And prana is vitality. On the astral plane dwell all the human entities that have been shaken off the physical body and its ethereal double, but have not yet disentangled themselves from the passional and emotional nature. Remember, the astral plane is the emotional plane. It is a region peopled by intelligent and semi-intelligent entities. Just as our own is thus peopled, it is crowded, like our world, with many types and forms of living things, as diverse from each other as a blade of grass is different from a tiger, and a tiger from a man. It interpenetrates our own world and is interpenetrated by it. But as the states of matter in the two worlds differ, they coexist without the knowledge of the intelligent beings in either. So we are in the astral right here and now, wherever you are, and the astral is within us. And all these beings are there too, whether we can see them or not. And some of us, if we have any of the clairs developed in us, can see them or hear them or smell or whatever. People can come in contact with these entities, and these entities can contact people. The point here to be clearly grasped is the existence of the astral plane as a definite region, and it's inhabited by a large diversity of entities, among whom are disembodied human beings. After shaking off the physical body and the etheric body, the man is now clothed with the astral body, a very ethereal astral matter. So it easily takes on any form impressed upon it, from without or molded from within. That refers to the comment I made earlier about when it's energy, and whatever you want to see or feel or be, there it is. And because it's all energy, it's not slowed down like it is here in the physical. If we want to make something happen in the physical, we have to put energy and effort and time into it. Whereas there, it's instantaneous. The power to feel, to desire, to enjoy, to suffer in the physical world, all that is included in what can be experienced in the astral. Up to this point, the post-mortem experience of all is much the same. It is a dreamy, peaceful semi-consciousness. And this, in the happiest cases, passes without vivid awakening into the deeper pre-Devachanic unconsciousness, which ends with a blissful awakening in Devachan for the period of repose that intervenes between two incarnations. So we're going to go into 3 personality types as they would journey through the astral. A pure life is a person who has led a pure life and has steadfastly striven to rise and to identify himself with the higher rather than the lower parts of his nature. When the passional elements in him are weak and accustomed to comparatively little activity, and will not be able to assert themselves strongly on the astral plane. So when she's saying the passional elements, she's speaking of like animal desires, or even like selfish desires, things of that nature. The mind, woven with the passions, emotions, and desires, has purified them. Remember, we're still talking about a purified person, or a fairly purified person, and has assimilated their pure part, absorbed it into itself, so that all that is left is a mere residue, easily to be gotten rid of, from which the immortal triad can readily free itself. The immortal triad is Atma Buddhi Manas. So just looking at the image on the right here, we have the body, the etheric, and the disintegration of skandhas is like the breaking up of the emotional, mental parts and the personality traits, what we know and what we think and how we feel about things. And so they become a little disorganized, and we'll see how they get organized again, but we'll leave that for now. Then there's the passage through the astral plane. And the astral plane has 7 subplanes, and we will look at that shortly. And then this shell that you see here, that's this residue that she's talking about. It's like the final bit of stuff that's left behind that is, it's like our quite high spiritual parts of us, but not high enough to enter Devachan, or not spiritually energized enough to enter Devachan. Slowly, this immortal triad, the true man, draws in all his forces. He draws into himself the memories of the earth life just ended, its loves, its hopes, its inspiration, and prepares to pass out of the astral into the blissful rest of Devachan, the land of the gods. I just need a sip of water here. The second death, that was just before Devachan, is the passage then of the immortal triad from the astral sphere into the higher state of Devachan. The pure type of man passes through this in the peaceful, dreamy state already described, and if left undisturbed, will not regain full consciousness until these stages are passed through and peace gives way to bliss. Now, this comment about if undisturbed, just kind of put a pin in that and remember that for what's coming up. During this whole period in the astral, whether it be long or short, days or centuries, they are within the reach of earth influences. An awakening may be caused by the passionate sorrow and desires of friends left on earth, and these violently vibrating emotional elements in the embodied persons may set up vibrations in the emotional body of the disembodied and rouse the lower manas, not yet withdrawn to and reunited with its parent, the spiritual intelligence. So people, I'm probably jumping ahead here, but people who are mourning in heavy grief about this person who's passed on, even when they're just approaching Devachan, their grief can touch that person and bring them back, hold them back, and delay their process of moving forward. And we're talking about emotional elements. Yeah. Yes, if you envision like a spider web, and if you're crying really hard and you're maybe angry about the passing of this person, that's like putting your finger on the spider web and it vibrates. And the person that you're mourning is going to feel that. And because they're still on the emotional plane, they'll respond to it in some way, and it may hold them back, or they may try to see an opportunity through a medium to get a message to you, for example. Thus, it may be roused from its dreamy state to vivid remembrance of the earth life, and may, if any sensitive or medium is concerned, either directly or indirectly, through one of these grieving friends in communication with the medium, use the medium's astral and physical bodies to speak or write to those left behind. This awakening is often accompanied with acute suffering, and that acute suffering is for the person who's passed. And even if this be avoided, the natural process of the triad freeing itself is rudely disturbed. Because at the point where it's about to go into Devachan, it's very close to being connected with the triad in a more pure state. And that's why she's saying it's a rude disturbance. And the completion of its freedom, of course, is delayed. This is rare in the purified type where this occurs. They will generally sleep themselves quietly into Devachan and so avoid any struggle or suffering in connection with the second death. All that is left behind on the astral plane is the shell, or the mere empty phantom, which gradually disintegrates. Any comments or questions about that? Is there anything in the chat, Jennifer? No? Okay, thank you. All right, so our second personality type is the average man or woman without marked spirituality of an elevated kind, but also without any marked evil tendencies. When an average man or woman reaches the astral plane, the spiritual intelligence is clothed with a body of desires, which possesses considerable vigor and vitality. The lower manas, closely interwoven with, during the earth life just ended, having lived much in the enjoyment of objects of sense and in the pleasures of the emotions, cannot quickly disentangle itself from the web of its own leaving. Hence, a considerable delay in the world of transition through the astral, while the desire wears out and fades away to a point at which they can no longer detain the soul with their clinging arms. So she's referring here to, well, I'll put it in contemporary times. People say obsessed with having cars or with having a lot of money or a lot of fame. And they're like that their entire life. They're not evil people, but they're very stuck in the material aspect of life. And so when they pass, right away they'll be clothed in this web of emotional attachment to what they had on earth. And it takes a long time for this stuff to break down and allow them to move forward. So it actually holds them back. But they're not aware of it because they're probably quite content for a while being in something similar to what they're familiar with. So here's a visual example. This is an example of a person who was particularly violent. That's why I've put the black rind here. These are the clothing, so to speak, of what a person would experience once they've passed, and this aggregates around them, the purest part of them being in the middle, and their most gross or the worst part of them, let's say, is on the outside. And what the theosophical teachings say is that this outside is how they will experience the astral. They won't feel any of the good stuff here yet. The outer has to wear away through time. And the determination of how long that is based on the intensity of the violence of that person and the duration during the physical life. So if they had a short burst of it, they probably wouldn't even have this black shell around them. They would be into the brown one. And by the way, these colors don't mean anything. I just made them just as an illustration. So to the center one now, you can see that it's disintegrating, and then the person will then be experienced experiencing this brown layer, which is the next subplane. And the next, here you can see. So this, what we're looking at here, these bars are the 7 subplanes of the astral. And at the bottom, we have violence, hatred, sexual deviation, suicide, and we have that very darkest with all the layers there. And that person will stay living, or I shouldn't say living, but experiencing this very, very, like they say, the Catholic idea of hell. That's what they're going to be experiencing until that outer layer wears off. And then they'll move to the next layer. And I wanted to say, like, both of these planes have suicide on them. The lower suicide is the type of person who commits suicide because they're trying to avoid punishment in the physical world. The upper suicide layer is one who would have committed suicide because of mental incapacity, like they didn't realize what they're doing. They're so messed up. So there's 2 different results from those suicide types. And as you can see the pattern here. As the personality wears off a layer, it moves up, moves up, moves up until eventually, if it had, and in this case, this person did have some iota of compassion or true love or empathy, it does get to have a moment or two in Devachan.
I have a question.
Hi, Ed. Yes, go ahead.
So, during life, an angry person sort of gets reinforced in their anger. In other words, they act out and they get angrier, and uh, the circumstances sort of reinforce that kind of thing. After death, is the reinforcement eliminated, or do they still basically, by still being angry, they reinforce that anger and his circumstances make them angrier and things like that? Or is that what makes it wear away because it doesn't get the reinforcement?
Okay, I haven't read anything specifically on that, but just as you're saying it, I'm thinking that the anger, I think they would draw it in, like when they're on the lower plane, for example, the lowest plane here, they would be also drawing in from others, like because there's elementaries, right, that are there. And I think for a while it may, I don't know, this is just my opinion. I think for a while it might get sustained by outside, like other personalities on that plane. But yeah, it does wear away. And so that kind of contradicts what I just said. So truthfully, I don't know. It's something I'd like to explore. Yes, Ron. Oh,
Yeah.
go
Yeah.
ahead, Ron.
Let me turn my mic on. I think you're doing very well in describing some of the process. But the other thing that's involved here is the karmic record that is left behind.
That's coming.
Okay, so the question about what causes the anger, what causes the emotional condition of this passing entity will go forward in the karmic record and will reappear possibly in the next incarnation. So there's 2 processes going on here.
Mhm.
One is a filtering of what goes into Devachan and the filtering of what goes into the karmic record.
Yes, and we'll come to that when we get to the part where we're coming back into the next life. Thanks for pointing that out. Are there any other questions or comments? Okay. Communication between the disembodied entity and the embodied entities on Earth is possible. So communication will generally be welcomed by the disembodied ones because their desires and emotions still cling to the Earth they have left, and the mind has not sufficiently lived on its own plane to find therein full satisfaction and contentment. Some of the communications made through mediums from the disembodied entities are thus drawn back to the earth sphere, a cruel kindness, delaying its forward evolution and introducing an element of disharmony into what should be an orderly progression. The period in the astral plane is thus lengthened, and the body of desires is fed, and its hold on the ego is maintained, and thus is the freedom of the soul deferred. So, I see online, there's mediums and they're talking to people who have just passed or suicides who have just passed and so on. And what they just don't realize what's going on is that they're actually harming, delaying, interfering with this process.
I have another question.
Yes, Ed.
Yeah, I'm just wondering whether the mediums Blavatsky was talking about back in the 19th century are of a different nature than the mediums we have today. That it seems like it's less active, or it's more passive. In other words, it allows the soul to show up. It doesn't draw the soul to the seance or whatever.
I agree, because I've actually, before I knew about Theosophy, I had a reading every year for 15 years. So if I've done harm, well, I've done harm. That's a karmic thing for me. But with what you're asking, Ed, I think it's different because the spiritualists at that time, they were trying to like channel voices and make apparitions happen, and like they're getting really close to the energetic level of these deceased people. But my experience with modern day mediums is that they don't want you, like, in my experience, I wasn't allowed to ask who could come. It was whoever comes. And you take what you get. But whoever does come, then you can start asking questions. But yeah, it's more passive, like you say. It's just it's what they want to bring. And of course, we get into it a little later about those who need to say something before they can leave. Something was left unsaid, some important family information, for example, and needs to be said. So they will find a medium or some way to get that message through. Are there any other comments or questions? Okay.
Just wanted to interject, sort of with respect to the grief that motivates people to seek out mediums.
Yes.
That relates to what you were talking about in terms of what's important in the environment of the body, for there not to be wailing and tearing of hair. In the liberal Catholic Church Requiem Eucharist, there is a prayer that focuses, its intent is to focus the attention of the grief-stricken family and friends on the importance of managing their emotions at this very traumatic time. And the prayer is, we pray thee, to God, for those who love thy servant, those whom thou hast called to sacrifice the solace of his or her earthly presence. O Lord, please comfort them with the balm of thy loving kindness, that strengthened by thee and resting upon the surety of thy wisdom, they may put aside their thoughts of grief and sorrow, and pour out upon him or her only such thoughts of love as may help him or her in the higher life of service to which thou hast now called him. I find that to be a beautifully stated a prayer to help the people left behind to refocus their grief in a positive direction to prevent some of these negative consequences of unrestrained grief that you've already spoken about.
Yeah. Thank you, Jennifer. That was a beautiful addition to this. I didn't think to add that in here. And two, it doesn't mean that we shouldn't grieve, that the grief isn't realistic. It's just that we need to manage it as much as we're able to and maybe disperse it over time, whatever. Everyone deals with their grief differently, but and in the case where someone's passing away, in terms of, they have a disease or it's old age, family and friends know it's coming. They have time to prepare themselves and not have violent reactions. But, traumatic accidents and things like that, and you're there in the moment with them, that's a karmic event. That kind of passing with that jarring drama going on is a result of karma. And so that their passing is supposed to be like that, and they have a different experience on the astral. Okay. So now we'll look at the third type of personality. Of course, these are just generalizations, but persons who have led an evil life, who have gratified and stimulated their animal passions, and have fed the body of desires while they have starved even the lower mind. These remain for long denizens in the astral and are filled with yearnings for the earth life they have left and for the animal delights that they can no longer, in the absence of the physical body, directly taste. These gather round the medium and the sensitive, endeavoring to utilize them for their own gratifications. And these are among the more dangerous of the forces, so rashly affronted in their ignorance by the thoughtless and the curious. So, there could be teenagers, oh, let's play around with a Ouija board, and they could inadvertently get in contact with one of these lower angry or manipulative type entity or personality, and really cause themselves, because they can attach themselves to people, living people who are weak or not very spiritual or not very intelligent, for example, and really run their lives. And in some cases, they'll actually, oh, I won't get into that. It comes up. I'll save that thought. It's serious stuff, that's for sure. Let me see here. And then there are the lives that are prematurely cut short by their own act. The act.
Just to comment on the previous people.
Yes.
That's one of the reasons to be against capital punishment.
Yes, I was going to get to that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Thanks, Ed. Okay, so lives prematurely cut short by the own act, that's suicide. The act of others, so being murdered, or by an accident, so a car accident or an earthquake, whatever. Their fate on the astral plane depends on the conditions which surrounded their outgoings from earthly life. For not all suicides are guilty of suicide, and the measure of possibility may vary within very wide limits. So we'll look at suicides first. Although not wholly severed from their sixth and seventh principles, which is Atma and Buddhi, to the day when they would have died a natural death, are separated from their higher principles by a gulf. In cases of good and innocent egos, moreover, the latter, so the innocent ego, gravitates irresistibly toward the sixth and seventh principle, and thus either slumbers surrounded by happy dreams or sleeps a dreamless, profound sleep until the hour strikes. The hour strike being when their normal lifespan would have been lived out and that the normal time of death would have taken place. The victim of an accident, whether good or bad, meaning the person was good or bad, is irresponsible for his death. Even if his death were due to some action in a previous life or an antecedent birth, like a premature baby that doesn't survive, was an act, in short, of the law of retribution. Still, it was not the direct result of an act deliberately committed by the personal ego. Had he been allowed to live longer, he may have atoned for his antecedent sins still more effectually. And even now, the ego having been made to pay off the debt of his maker, the personal ego is free from the blows of retributive justice. So the person who dies by accident is not responsible for that death, although it may have come from previous acts of other lifetimes. The Dian Chohans, who have no hand in the guidance of the living human ego, protect the helpless victim when it is violently thrust out of its element into a new one, before it is matured and made fit and ready for it. So like if a person is dying from old age, they're preparing themselves for this passing. But when there's a sudden and violent death, they're not prepared. And so the Dian Chohans help, I guess, comfort or stabilize the personality when they first arrive on the astral. These, when suicides or killed by accident, can communicate with those in earth life, but much to their own injury, as we mentioned before. As said above, the good and innocent sleep happily till the life is over. Where the victim of an accident is depraved and gross, his fate is a sad one. The suicides, who foolishly hoping to escape life, find themselves still alive, have suffering enough in store for them from that very life. Their punishment is in the intensity of the latter. So that what they did in their last life is going to be the greatest source of their suffering on the astral. And they have lost, by their rash act of suicide, their seventh and sixth principles, though not forever. So she's saying that she lost contact, but they're still connected, but the contact is broken. And they can regain them, but that's through another life where they start developing some compassion or love or that sort of thing. But instead of accepting their punishment, so here we have the suicide who was dodging punishment in jail or what have you. They may take their chances of redemption, but they're often made to regret life, and they're tempted to regain a hold upon it by sinful means. On the astral plane, the land of intense desires, they can gratify their earthly yearnings through a living proxy, and by so doing, at the expiration of the natural term, they generally lose their monad forever. So she's saying here that this type of personality who's so attached to the physical desires can actually make a proxy out of a weaker person or a young person who's not very experienced in life, and say that this personality is an alcoholic and he's got to have his drink. So they will prey on these weaker incarnated people or person and more or less get in their skin and get them to drink for them. And they may, this unsuspecting person may not realize what is driving them to drink. There's no history of it in their family, and here they are, alcoholics, and they can't stop, right? They may go to rehab 5 or 6 times. They still can't let go of it because there's this other thing that's causing it. And if that happens, just a minute, Ron, I see you. If that happens, the personality that's deceased, that's causing this, will lose their monad forever. So there will be a final disconnect between the sixth and seventh principles, and that person may incarnate again, but will be a degenerative version of what he or she was before. And if there's enough energy and power in that person, they may have another couple of lives, but each one will be successively worse, and and eventually they will just be cast off and not be able to have another life. They will be disintegrated, and the higher self can, at that point or even before, take on another personality, put out a new personality, and having shed the old one. Yes, Ron.
Let me turn on again. I agree with generally what you're saying, but we're also told that this loss of connection with the monad and the monad being totally separated is something that is extremely rare.
That's true.
And that even in a person's evil life, if there is one iota of higher feeling, that may save them from this total disintegration.
Yes.
But it may take a number of lifetimes to regain their position, if you like. I just wanted to put in the idea that losing this contact with a monad, we're told, is extremely rare, that there is always a chance of redemption. And that's one of the things that has been put out to us by the adepts, that there is this possibility of redemption, and that having a total loss is extremely rare.
Yes. And
although there is a possibility.
Yeah, and it isn't like you do it once and you're out. Like you say, there's chances for redemption, as you say, to reconnect.
It does make a huge difference on their future incarnations, and they may have to do a lot of work and re-educating and achieving in order to regain their position.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you for adding that. Deborah.
I would add that, under this philosophy that I've even heard from different teachers of theosophy, that someone else, who, prays on their behalf or tries to assist them, can also get them there, that it not necessarily just be, although one small thing, as Ronald is saying, can take him there, but also someone else on their behalf can also assist in that. Over.
So I have a question.
Yeah, Ed.
So the way this is portrayed doesn't really make any sense whatsoever, because, your seventh principle, Atma, is your being. You mean they don't exist anymore? The second principle is your consciousness. They're not conscious anymore. So I know they're trying to portray something, but I don't think their explanation is rational or.
I don't think she's saying that your Atma, the Atma and the Buddhi go away. They remain. It's the attachment to that personality that falls apart.
You know,
That's what she said.
yeah, I don't understand what if you're not attached, then that means you don't exist.
No, it means you exist in a way that can't participate in
Oh,
what's going on in the physical world.
oh,
It seems like it's saying you can't have a human experience anymore. That's how it reads to me.
The analogy would be you're the driver of a car and the brakes and the steering cables are severed. The car still has momentum and it still exists, but you, the driver, have lost control of it.
I say.
Yeah. Yes, Ron?
We have to remember that the reason that we are going through life is that we're evolving. And each of our experience has some effect on that evolution of ours. And so it's more that when talking about the effect of a very evil personality, the important in part to me is that their evolution has been stopped. And so it's going to take a lot of effort to get back on the evolutionary path. So it's not so much the importance of the focusing on the connection with the Atma, it's recognizing that we're here to evolve and the way we live our life has an impact on how we do that evolution. And if we are slowing or halting or creating a problem, that is what's the most critical element. I think the other part, the spirit is very strong. It's there. It takes a lot to dissemper it, but I think it's more important that our focus is on why we're here and what impact we're having on our own evolutionary path. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, that helps a lot, Ron.
Yeah. Deborah?
Yeah, what I just wanted to say, at least for me throughout my studies, and a lot of them are with you, Mary, is to hold these ideas lightly. Like, they're not the truth. They're the, finger pointing at the truth. And the real benefit here, oops, I'm so sorry. The real benefit here is going to be to allow us to come together and talk about these things, to explore, because we can't know, we just can't, these are ideas, but what wonderful things to talk about and to share and explore. And that's why I'm just happy I had a chance to come here today. So there's a lot I don't necessarily agree with, but I'll tell you what it does, it makes me stretch. So thank you. Over.
Thanks, Deborah.
So I have another question.
Go for it, Ed.
So the personality is going to die out one way or another. I mean, it's not the permanent part. And like Ron points out, it's a vehicle for the evolution of the soul.
Mhm.
And so whether it's connected or disconnected, or it dies in the astral plane or dies on Earth, or it's going to die. It's not permanent, and it's being used on different planes and things like that. And the timing may be interesting to us who identify with the personality, but it's really ultimately not that important when and where it or how long it stays, except like Ron says, it's a vehicle for evolution. And when so yeah.
Okay, thank you. As to the victims of accidents, these fare still worse, and they're talking about the people who she called bad. Unless they were so good and pure as to be drawn immediately into a state of quiet slumber until their natural life term is finished and find themselves born in the Devachan, a gloomy fate is theirs. If sinful and sensual, they wander about until their death hour comes, cut off in the full flush of earthly passions which bind them to familiar scenes. They are enticed by the opportunities which mediums afford to gratify them vicariously. So she's saying that, kind of lost my train of thought here. Sorry. Um, the natural life term is what we would have lived had we not had this accident. And for that period of time, if they were on the bad side, as she says, then their time on the astral isn't very pleasant at all. Um, they're in those lower subplanes, experiencing ranges of discomfort and suffering depending on their degree of bad, let's say.
I think someone else pointed out that while they feel isolated and there are always helpers around and loved ones who are sending them energy, and they're not really alone.
Yeah,
And
yeah. But they can become elementaries of intensified craft, wickedness, and cruelty, provoking their victims to horrid crimes and reveling in their commission. They not only ruin their victims by these psychic vampires, borne along by the torrent of their hellish impulses, at the fixed close of their natural period of life, they're carried out of the earth's aura into regions where for ages they endure exquisite suffering with entire destruction. So that's what I was mentioning earlier, where they're cast off. And like Ron said, it's very, as we understand, it's a very, very rare thing to have happen. But elementaries apparently are not as rare. They like to, they can be, um, like tricksters and like to pull puns on people, on mediums to pretend to be who they are or pretend to be who they're not to convince the person who's sought out the medium, trying to portray to that person, oh, I'm, so and so, and they think the person thinks, oh, I've been talking with an archangel or something like that, and really it's not. And if the medium isn't a very experienced medium, or a clairvoyant even, they can't determine whether it's an elemental or an actual angel that's coming through. So there's risks there of certain degrees. And then this part about ruining their victims, again, that's like the alcoholic thing where the alcoholic personality is running some poor person into their life into the ground. And I think coming up will be the part about what Ed's talking about, the
I have another question. Does Blavatsky talk about exorcism at all?
not that I've read, not that I've read. This is based on Annie Besant's book, Death and After.
Oh, okay. Well,
Yeah.
does she talk about it?
I've never come across exorcism in anything theosophy that
Yeah.
I've read. Not yet.
Yeah, neither have I. So
Hmm. The rule is that a person who dies a natural death will remain from a few hours to several short years within the Earth's attraction on the astral plane. But exceptions are the cases of suicides and those who die a violent death in general. One who was destined to live, say, 80 or 90 years, but who either killed himself or was killed by some accident, let us suppose at the age of 20, would have to pass in the astral not a few years, but 60 or 70 years as an elementary. Premature death brought on vicious courses by overstudy or by voluntary sacrifices for some great cause will bring about delay in the astral, but the state of the disembodied entity will depend on the motive that cut short the life. So I found this overstudy. I thought that was a rather interesting description of a way for someone to die, but I got to thinking about it, and I may be wrong, but I thought it could be a person who is trying to initiate Kundalini. And, voluntary sacrifices, well, that could be going to war to defend your country. If your country is really under threat, you're going there to protect your family and your nation.
That's interesting. So, do you think a lot of premature deaths happen during war, and
Yeah.
that's why, the spiritualist movement in the 19th century was caused by the Civil War, and and also in the 20s due to World War One, there was a lot of activity on the astral world due to premature death.
I never thought about that, and I haven't read anything about that. Have you read anything about that? Or is that something you concluded on your own?
That just came out.
Oh, that's really interesting. I'm gonna give that some thought. Motive is everything, and man is punished in a case of direct responsibility, never otherwise. In the victim's case, the natural hour of death was anticipated accidentally, while in that of the suicide, death is brought on voluntarily and with a full and deliberate knowledge of its immediate consequences. I wish she didn't use the word punished because, we look at karma as an effect, right? Cause and effect. But, in some cases it is punishment. But I have found that in contemporary teachings, there's an avoidance for using that word. Thus, a man who causes his death in a fit of temporary insanity is not a suicide, nor is he left to prey to the temptations of the astral plane, but falls asleep like any other victim. The population of the astral plane is thus recruited with a I can never say that word, with peculiarly dangerous element by all the acts of violence, legal and illegal. A murderer in the body is not a pleasant member of society, but a murderer suddenly expelled from the body is a far more dangerous entity. Society may protect itself against the first, but in its present state of ignorance, it is defenseless as against the second. So here you go, Ed. This is it right here, that this is the reason why the death penalty should be abolished, because it sets free these individuals, murderers, who, well, I can't say specifically, but they're probably still angry or they still have their murderous tendencies when they're executed. And now they're free on the lower plane, the lowest subplane, to be taking advantage of living out vicariously what they want to do through living people who are weaker, unsuspecting, disabled in some manner, and get them to become murderers for them. And we've all heard at some point any kind of news report where someone was a murderer, that something made them do it, or the devil made them do it, or they were told to do it. And I think that's a direct correlation to this situation, is they were made a proxy. Now for the lighter stuff. Approaching Devachan. When the immortal triad, that's Atma, Buddhi, Manas, has quitted the astral, it passes wholly out of the sphere of earth attractions. The ego can confabulate no more with easygoing mediums. Having shaken off its last garment, it crosses the threshold of Devachan and becomes a Devachani. The Devachani. It is in a peaceful, dreamy state before this passage out of the earth sphere, the second death, or pre-Devachanic unconsciousness. Regarded from the earth sphere, the passage is death, while regarded from that of Devachan, it is birth. Devachan is a Sanskrit word for the abode of the blessed, into which ascend those who have accumulated much merit by the practice of virtues. It is the thought world that is the nearest to reality. That's, I guess, explains why when we were looking at the planes, the subplanes, that Devachan is also called the mental plane, because it's the nearest to the thought world, of the real thought world. Again, the mind is permanent as compared with the transitory material world. For the mind is only a clumsy name for the living thinker in us, the true and conscious entity, the inner man, that was, that is, and will be, for whom the hour shall never strike. It is very significant in this connection that every Devachanic stage is conditioned by the earth stage that precedes it. And the man can only assimilate in Devachan the kinds of experience he has been gathering on earth. So if he or she was a colorless, flavorless personality, then he or she will have a colorless, feeble Devachanic state. A husband, father, student, patriot, artist, Christian, Buddhist, he must work out the effects of his earth life in his Devachanic life. He cannot eat and assimilate more food than he has gathered. He cannot reap more harvest than he has sown seed. It takes but a moment to cast a seed into a furrow. It takes many a month for that seed to grow into the ripened ear. But according to the kind of the seed is the ear that grows from it, and according to the nature of the brief earth life is the grain reaped. So essentially saying that all the good that we do, all the unselfish deeds, more so unselfish thoughts and intentions, are what is reaped and experienced on the Devachanic plane. Once someone has entered Devachan, he's no longer recalled to earth and no longer reachable by mediums. But the Devachani in the lower stages of Devachan is still within the personal boundaries of his past earth life. He is shut into relationships of the one incarnation. His paradise is peopled with those he loved best with an undying love, that holy feeling that alone survives, for as long as the desire for that presence remains. So, as I understand this, when you're on Devachan and you, like the astral, you can make it what you want it to be, just because it's all energy. You can create your own idea of your best friend, like all the elements and things that you love about your best friend are there that you can enjoy in this blissful time. Now that person, say they're alive, they're not there. This is just your idea of them. And like I say, they're not there. But if that living person wanted to be in touch, that could be done through dreams, but not through a medium. But it could be done through the dream process or the dream experience. So the person who's in Devachan can have around him or her all their favorite people, all the stuff that they've earned through the work they've done. And we'll get into the duration shortly here.
But it seems that the content is based on that one lifetime,
Yes,
not all the different lifetimes.
yes, that's what I gathered too. Yeah. It's only when they can get to the second level, like Devachan's subdivided just like all the others, and there's two main levels. And once you get to the upper one, then you can have access to past lives. But then again, you're not so interested in personalities because by then the personality has completely been dropped behind. Yes, Ron.
Yeah, we're told that the Devachanic period only relates to the last incarnation, and that will last for a very much longer time than the person lived. But at the end of the Devachanic period, there is a rebirth of the reincarnating ego, which means that the experience of the last incarnation are now melded into all the other experiences that were present in the reincarnating ego. So they talk about the reincarnating ego as being reborn because now it is including the last incarnation. And this occurs at the end of the Devachanic period.
Okay. Thank you. In Devachan, the spiritual occupation is always pleasant and fills his life with rapture. It is the function of the aspirations of earth life. In Devachan, if the sower has sowed but little seed, the Devachanic harvest will be meager, and the growth of the soul will be delayed by the lack of nutriment on which it has to feed. Hence the enormous importance of the earth life, the field of sowing, the place where experience is to be gathered. It conditions, regulates, limits the growth of the soul. It yields the rough ore which the soul then takes in hand and works upon during the Devachanic stage, smelting it, forging it, tempering it into the weapons it will take back with it for its next life. The experienced soul in Devachan will make for itself a splendid instrument for its next earth life. The inexperienced one will forge a poor blade enough, but in each case, the only material available is that brought from earth. In Devachan, the soul, as it were, sifts and sorts out its experiences. It gradually gains the power to estimate the earthly experiences at their real value. It works out thoroughly and completely as objective realities all the ideas of which it only conceived the germ on earth. So that last part, say you're 60 years old and all your life you wanted to play the violin, but you never got a chance to. And then you decided that, oh, I really want to start playing, but I have arthritis. I can't actually play, but you could learn to read music nonetheless. You could explore the world of music. And then when you're on Devachan, you could further explore the world of music. And then when you would be coming into your next incarnation, you would have already done a lot of work to enable you to, if the conditions and where you were born is right, you could then get to experience that world of music. And it's more towards the arts end of things. It's not about pursuing things that are selfish and that sort of stuff. And there was something else I wanted to comment here. Oh, yes, relates to what Ron was saying about you take this into your next incarnation. But again, it's saying if you haven't brought much in, you don't stay there long. You may only get a little taste of Devachan, and then you're back into the cycle of reincarnation. But I get the sense from things I've read in the more contemporary theosophy that a lot of people are to this point of evolution where they are going to stay there for like hundreds of years or even 1,000 or 2,000 years. They'll stay in Devachan. Thus, noble aspiration is a germ which the soul would work out into a splendid realization in Devachan, and it would bring back with it to earth for its next incarnation that mental image to be materialized on earth when opportunity offers and suitable environment presents itself. That refers to like the musician. Out of the knowledge gained in his past life, the soul draws his plan for the next, and he returns to earth to put into objective material from the edifices he has planned. Oops. The return to earth. At length, the causes that carried the ego into Devachan again bring the thirst for sentient material life that can be gratified only on the physical plane. The greater the degree of spirituality reached, the purer and loftier the preceding earth life. The longer the stay in Devachan, the world of spiritual, pure, and lofty effects. The average time there is from 10 to 15 centuries. But in modern time, or modern life, this has much shortened in consequence of the greater attraction exercised by physical objects over the heart of man. So I'm guessing she's referring there to, I want to get back so I can be president, or they're whatever is attracting them on the physical world seems to be hauling them out of Devachan sooner so they can get back to it. I don't know. Maybe I misunderstand that. The Devachanic is longer or shorter according to the type of life which preceded it. The more there was of spiritual, intellectual, and emotional activity of a lofty kind, the longer will be the gathering in of the harvest. The more there was of activity directed to selfish gain on earth, the shorter will be the Devachanic. When the experiences are assimilated, he brings back with him his now increased experience and any further gains he may have made in Devachan along the lines of abstract thought. For in one sense, we can acquire more knowledge. That is, we can develop further any faculty which we loved and strove after during life, provided it is concerned with abstract and ideal things, such as music, painting, poetry, etc. Yes, Jennifer.
With regard to the length of time a monad spends in Devachan, I have read that people can, in their earthly life, make a conscious decision to have that period of time be shortened, to compress, sort of condense the working through of their karma, to accelerate the rate of progress of on their spiritual path, to reach the end point sooner. So it's, in that case, the shorter duration is not a reflection of selfishness, but rather the altruism associated with wanting to bring your cycle of karma to an end so that you can be of help to other souls in that journey.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, have you read that in connection with that, realizing you're on the path, or you want to be on the path so that you can accelerate, right? Accelerate. Yes. And so there's a condensation of karma to be experienced and shorter time. And yeah. Okay. Thanks. Yes, Ron.
As to the period in Devachan, we're told that the period can also be quite a bit shortened because of the spiritualized entity themselves. So as we rise in our spirituality, that can have an effect on the links in Devachan. The other surprising thing that I found is that the reincarnating ego themselves do not determine the nature of the new incarnation. We're told that it is karma itself that determines the nature of the new incarnation. I found that quite surprising because you like to think that, well, maybe you had some idea of your own wishes as to what would happen. But we're told by the adepts that no, what will happen will be based on your karmic record.
I think too, there's the aspect of what you want to experience. Like there's helpers and guides who, help with all this decision making and planning, as I understand it, before you're reincarnated. Because a person might think, oh, I can take on, 5 things, but actually no, it would probably kill you to take on 5 things in one life, 5 major developments, for example. So there's some assistance there, but I think the monad must have some input into what their life path is going to be, and karma is going to come in and shape it and be in a time when there's the appropriate people with whom the karma is related to. All it's so complex, but
It is very complex, and we know that our life in our personality is a time when we make progress. So
yes,
whatever our new life is going to be, our job starts at the time of incarnation, however that might turn out to be. And that's where we make progress.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're running over, but there's only a couple more slides if I recall correctly. So bear with me. So we finished this one. But as he dies out of Devachan to be reborn on Earth, he meets in the atmosphere of the terrestrial plane the seeds of evil sown in his preceding life on Earth. The evil he did in his past has been in a state of suspended animation, not of death. They send out their roots into the new personality, which begins to form itself for the incarnation of the returning man. So there you go, Ron. The ego has to take up the burden of his past, and these germs or seeds coming over as the harvest of the past life are the skandhas. They consist of material qualities, sensations, abstract ideas, tendencies of mind, mental powers, and while the pure aroma of those attached itself to the ego and passed with it into Devachan, all that was gross, base, and evil remained in the state of suspended animation spoken above. These are taken up by the ego as he passes outwards towards terrestrial life and are built into the new man of flesh, which the true man is to inhabit. So I made this little illustration to show the cycle. So let me get my mouse here. So we have the death, the etheric body, which stays with the physical body if it's not cremated. The disintegration of knowledge, ideas, tendencies, characteristics is disintegrated, and then it can be made into those that clothing, the personality. Remember those circles we were looking at on the astral, and the personality may go through all the astral subplanes or maybe just touch a couple of them. And as it moves on towards Devachan and the second death is when it leaves behind just the only the parts that the astral plane left a lot of parts. There's a purification process that takes place on the astral. And whatever was missed, so to speak, on the astral and does not isn't the same frequency as being in Devachan. That's what's left behind in the shell. And so there's this second death, so to speak, of these emotional, mental aspects. And then on Devachan, we didn't talk about the levels there, but we'll just say we're on Devachan for now. And then there's the impulse to reincarnate once this time has been used up on Devachan of bliss and comfort and beauty and so on. So this impulse starts to lead the consciousness, and the new ego is being brought in for a new personality. We didn't talk about rays, so I'm not going to get into the rays here. And then as it descends into reincarnation, whatever is left behind by this shell here is what will be brought into this personality. And here we have the skandhas that are left over from here that were unresolved. And they are in the fields of knowledge, action, consciousness, perception, and form. They all get into the mix. And then the emotional, so the mental body is formed, the emotional body is formed. Then the etheric body is born, which is the transfer, the vehicle of pranic energy for the human. And there you have the baby and onto a new life. And then there's one more slide. I think that's it. When reincarnation takes place, the immortal self sends out its ray, which becomes encased in grosser matter in the desire body and in the etheric double and in the physical body. The once free immortal intelligence, thus entangled, enslaved, and chained, works heavily and laboriously through the coatings that enwrap it. And so the rounds of births and deaths goes on, the turning of the wheel of life, the treading of the cycle of necessity, until the work is done and the building of the perfect man is completed. Thank you, everyone. I'm going to unshare here. Are there any comments or questions?
One quick question. My question might seem off topic a little bit. I read a couple of articles. The small children, like at very young children, they remember their past, and they say, "Well, there was a pilot who died, and I'm that pilot, and I had an airplane. I was married." How did that aligns with this what we're talking, or it's two different things?
No, it's not two different things. What I've encountered and read is that a person who dies young and who can still find a way to reincarnate in a life that would still fulfill what would have been lived out had that accident not occurred. There are occasions where they will find another family, in similar situations and incarnate. And because they didn't go through the whole astral process where they were purifying and leaving behind mental memory and so on and getting to Devachan, they still have those memories. And that's what they're able to bring back. But they often fade by the age of 7 or 8 years old. They start getting on to their new life. That's what I've come across. I don't know if anyone else has found something or heard something different or can add to that.
Yeah, it's usually in cases of the sudden death or
Yeah.
something like that
Yeah.
that the children remember.
Yeah.
Also, I was thinking that, there's sometimes where people have physical scars that match their previous life, and I was thinking that may be a part of what they pick up on that skanda batch of stuff.
Right. Or birthmarks are where there were scars from something that killed them in a previous life, that kind of thing too. Yeah, I never thought of it as the skandhas. Yeah. Ed, you're just full of so many good ideas.
Well, it even apparently can inform the phobias you have.
Yeah.
There was in a book by H.K. Challoner called The Wheel of Rebirth, the account that was investigated clairvoyantly of a man who had a mortal fear of birds. And it came to be known that in a previous life he had been wounded on a battlefield. And as he was lying there, immobile, dying, birds started to,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
vultures started to,
Got goosebumps from that
attack
one.
him. But what was interesting was once that experience was integrated into his current personality's consciousness, his phobia went away.
Yeah. How do you spell that? H.J. Chandler?
H-K,
Oh, A.
and H-K, and it's Challoner.
Okay.
It's
Thank
a
you.
terrific book. You're welcome.
Sounds good. I'll read it because I have one of those issues myself, fortunately.
Well, I can tell you, I had a patient. I was a community nurse in Toronto, and she passed away now, unfortunately. She was telling a story that she was afraid of wells, like wells with water. So she did a past life reading, or what's that? She said she was astonished that in her previous life, or maybe prior life to that, she was drowned in the water well. So that's why she's.
Mhm.
I don't know. Like that was the story she told me.
Mhm.
Now she's not with us. I'm just kind of retelling to you.
So, Edgar Casey dealt with a lot of these cases where, so if you were interested in this, you could read Edgar Casey, and time after time, his healings had to do with past lives, um, bleeding over into the present life.
Mhm. Or causing ailments that couldn't be healed through conventional means. They'd find some kind of ailment and they wouldn't know what was the cause of it and that sort of thing. And then he would do a reading for them and realize what it was and tell them what to do to overcome it. And apparently a lot of success rate there.
You see, we live in a material world, and all that stuff is cut off from us. Just you have to believe what you see in this, like outside. That's all. But it's definitely cannot be all there is. There is beyond much more, much bigger world.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, we have to rely on, this source that somebody said, somebody did, and whatever.
Yeah. All right. Well, I want to thank you, Jennifer, for helping me this morning with this get started. And I'm really happy to see all of you here today. Thank you for your contributions, questions, and comments. It was great. I thought it was very insightful for me as well. I learned a couple new things today and ideas. So
Yes, well, thank you, Mary, for this thorough and informative presentation. And as all of us will eventually pass through the portal of death, it's helpful to use the insights you've shared to renew our focus on creating those conditions in the time remaining to us for the most elevated experience of post-incarnation life. So thank you again. And anyone interested in more in-depth insights will find, of course, many theosophical resources on the internet.
yeah.
It's been most helpful. So thanks again.
Thanks, everyone.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.